This session is sponsored by the Digest of Wine and Spirits Law, an easy-to-use online reference covering statutes, regulations, and administrative decisions governing the sales and marketing of wine and distilled spirits.
Hello, everybody. My name is Eric Guerra. I'm an 18-year veteran in the wine business at a bunch of different positions, and every gray hair on my head is all of those 18 years, I promise you that. So if I think about the last 18 years in the business, and particularly the last 6 months, of course, you know, the one thing, and there's been people in the business that have been in there that I've worked for or with for, been in the business for 30 or 40 years, is how things don't change very often. We have a comfort zone in wine. If you think about it from the late 70s when things started to explode in California, that a bottle of wine is as excellent then as it is today. I mean, we have innovation, we have some new ways of working, but none of it was really forced on us like over the last 6 months. And what I mean by that is we were forced to come out of our comfort zone, forced to look at things differently, forced to approach our customers in all a new way. And in the media, you hear a lot about direct to consumer because that's gone very well and how we've changed hospitality. But interesting to us and my esteemed panel here is that we spend probably most of our day with the trade and the media and operations and the back of the house stuff, the non-sexy behind the scenes stuff. So this discussion today is going to focus on the trade and the media and what changes we were forced to make in a very positive way that have come out and taken us out of our comfort zone. So the topic today is the COVID-19 impact on managing trade and media relations, changes that are here to stay. So I'd like to introduce my awesome panel. First, I'd like to introduce Sarah Jones. She's the Vice President of Benson Marketing Group. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Next, I'm going to introduce Jason Haas. He's the partner and general manager of the outstanding Tablas Creek Vineyard. How you doing,
Eric?
Jason? Next is Mike Wangbickler. He's the president of Balzac Communications and Marketing. Hey, Mike.
How are you?
And finally, Kim Stair-Wallace, who's the president of the legendary Dry Creek Vineyard, of course, in Sonoma County.
Hi, good to be here.
Hi, everybody. So this is a great topic. I think this is going to be an outstanding discussion, virtual roundtable. But Kim, we're going to start with you. When we obviously thought of this particular roundtable, we were thinking 100% about COVID-19 and how that has impacted us. But in the last few week or so, you've been dealing with yet another fire in Sonoma County, bigger, badder than ever before. And it's just getting exhausting. Our thoughts go out to all the wineries out there and the people in the industry that are dealing with this. But how has this impacted you just recently?
Well, it has been for sure a roller coaster ride of emotions. I think I've had every emotion in the last week that you can have. So we're right in the middle of Dry Creek Valley, and I feel so lucky that my parents chose this particular spot to start the winery 48 years ago. Actually, today is our 48th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
But we're on the valley floor, and the fires are basically due west of us in a very remote mountainous area off of West Dry Creek Road. And then, of course, north towards Lake Sonoma, and of course, south, toward Guerneville. But so far we've been out of harm's way, and I feel really lucky. But it has been, it's been, I don't even know what the right word is because I could use about 20 words.
Yeah.
Some of them aren't even very polite, but we're okay. We're safe. We're starting to harvest on Wednesday, and we have been downgraded to an evacuation warning from a mandatory one.
Oh, that's
so that's good. So I moved back home this morning, and I'm here at the winery, and all's well.
Well, it's not just the impact to harvest, but as the president of the winery, you're also, you're tasked with taking care of everybody that works for the company and that your family built. Has the stress level just gone to a new DEFCON level, if it is even all possible? Harvest already is massively stressful and difficult. I typically stayed away from winemakers during harvest. I'd get work done up front, and then I'd kind of introduce myself back in November or December, depending what winery I was managing. So how are the people that work at Dry Creek now?
Well, we're a remarkably resilient crew here, and I think, frankly, all of Sonoma County is at this point, all of California. But they're holding up. Everybody's got a smile on their face because I think we all feel safe that our winery is. I don't want to say. I mean, I'm gonna knock on wood here, but I think we feel safe and that the winery is not going to go down in flames. We still are quite a long ways away from the fires, and as long as the weather continues to be, favorable, we'll be okay. Yeah. On Friday, my winemaker Tim Bell and our assistant winemaker were busy trying to button everything up because we didn't know whether we were going to be able to return or not, and so they basically got everything buttoned up just in the event that we couldn't return till early this week. And thankfully we're back here today and all is well. So,
well, that's really great news. Yeah, it's unfortunately the new normal, right?
Yeah.
All our friends on Facebook, I couldn't tell you how many of them just said, hey, I'm packing up again. They're like, they know how to do it. The family's all into it, and resilient is absolutely a great way to say it because we've been through it so many times.
Well, and the good news is we're all really prepared, and the winery was very prepared this year, from many standpoints. So.
Right. Well, the only thing left is locusts, so just prepare for that on the next harvest, and we'll go from there.
Or aliens.
Or aliens, which is possible. Absolutely.
Rivers running with blood.
That would be a welcome thing at this point. So. So thank you very much. We really appreciate that, Kim. And it's great to see you in your office in Dry Creek. And I couldn't imagine driving down Dry Creek Road and not seeing your winery. It's obviously one of the staples in the middle of the valley. So Jason, we're going to go on to you right now. And, your winery is absolutely legendary. I don't want to make you blush on this camera, but I'm a huge fan of your wines. Absolutely pioneer in California. So you guys have been around for quite some time. So tell us how the COVID-19 has impacted your business in some just incredible ways.
Well, it's maybe easier to just talk about the ways it hasn't impacted the business. It's,
I can narrow it down, right?
This is my 18th year out here at Tablas Creek. It was started by my dad, but I've been out here for 18 years also. And these last 6 months have been easily the hardest 6 months that I've seen, and the ones that have forced us to think on our feet and change the way that we're doing things. We're a winery that's split almost equally between DTC and wholesale in terms of our quantity. So, and within that, it's basically the DTC is sort of half things that are either ordered over e-commerce or walk out the door of our tasting room. And the other half is wine club shipments. And then in terms of the stuff that we're selling wholesale, it's basically half restaurants and half retail. And what happened is during COVID, 2 of those 4 outlets disappeared. We didn't have a tasting room for 3 months. Restaurants basically were either closed or weren't buying. And so what we had to do is figure out how much can we grow the pieces that are working? How do we make sure that we stay in contact with the people, the actors in the wholesale market, so that when things do start to get back up and going again, we're at least somewhere in their plans? And how do we have the confidence that we're going to be able to roll with whatever comes next?
So tell us one thing that has changed in any of those places that you don't see going away ever. Let's say vaccination comes in, the world goes back to normal, but this is one thing that you did during this and you won't see yourself going back on. Is it the way your sales reps travel or present to the trade? Is it something that has to do with hospitality?
There's sort of one on each side. One of the things that we've realized is we were, in terms of the DTC piece, we were really underutilizing our email list. We were worrying that we were contacting people, we didn't want to contact people too much. We basically doubled the frequency with which we were contacting our wine club and quadrupled the frequency with which we were contacting our mailing list, and got only positive feedback from it.
You found the middle. You guys were not in the middle. You found that.
Yeah, we thought we were in the middle, and we were not. We were somewhere off on the left-hand edge of the frame. So, and then in terms of the larger wholesale market, honestly, I think that the ability to do non-located trade events where you put together samples, you send them out to trade, and this is equally true for trade and to media, to allow people to join you from where they are instead of having to meet at a centralized location, to be able to archive those sorts of events, these tastings and discussions, so that people can access them later.
Yeah.
For me, it's so much more efficient and so much more durable than the old model of you travel to a city, you rent a private room in a restaurant, you invite people, you know that half of them are not going to show up, even if they say they're going to, or they're going to be late, or they're going to have to leave early. And
how many times have we all sat there and just said, okay, is everybody going to show up today? And then sometimes they show up too much.
Right.
And you're in an expensive restaurant, you're like, oh, I'm blowing my expense budget today.
Yeah. And
I got to apologize to someone tonight on email, you know.
And
so,
even,
yeah.
I mean, we're not a huge winery. It's not like we have a sales force of dozens out there. We have one national sales manager and me, and we can sometimes send one of our winemakers out, and that's it. So how many markets are we actually able to hit in a normal year?
Right.
How many trade events are we actually able to do?
So you don't feel like you have to prioritize as much. You can kind of canvas the landscape even more so with the trade. That's
and you can reach people where they are. I think that's the biggest take-home lesson for all of these COVID pivots that we've had to do, is that we've been asking people to come to us in one way or another as a wine industry forever. Either they've got to physically come to the winery, or they've got to come to a wine dinner, or they've got to come to a festival where we're standing there pouring wine. And I feel like our ability to instead meet people where they are in the time that they have is for me the lasting lesson. And that's true on both the trade side and on the consumer side.
Well, to me, those are two very big things that I hope sustain throughout whatever happens in the future, because we were talking before the call and how much I traveled in my life of being in airplanes to travel to all these meetings, and you know, the one that is meaningful, there's another 3 that don't happen. Someone gets sick, they don't show up, and it's a really, and the expense is pretty massive. Now, it doesn't take away from the personal experience of the one-on-one, but it definitely, for someone like you guys who have one national manager, it allows you the opportunity to really, I think, be a far more effective at your 3-tier channel. I mean, I truly believe that. So thank you for that. So I'm going to bring in our marketing and PR team here. I'm going to ask Sarah, can you tell us how the COVID has impacted how you work with the media? And have you seen the media change in how they are requesting or responding things from you guys?
Yeah, I think there's been a couple of different things. I mean, first of all, I would echo everything that Jason has just shared, because as he said, that a lot of the changes and what we expect in the future will mirror what's happening with the trade.
Right.
But I think that we've had a couple of different phases. One is right at the beginning in March, early April. And then as you move into May, June, July, things shifted a bit. So that first 6 weeks or so, I think everybody was really in shock to say, oh, okay, I have to change all these things. We're pushing this out, we're pushing that out. I'm not traveling here, and there was a sense from our team, and I think from a lot of people in the PR world, to be very delicate. And needing to be very, very sensitive to people losing their jobs, their positions as editors, or not getting the assignments that they were getting at freelance. Right. And that still continues, I think, now. But what we're seeing is, I think everyone's sort of settled down a little bit. Like, okay, I'm in for the long haul. I can do this. I have to get from a press perspective, I need to get really smart about who I'm pitching and what stories are resonating with editors.
Yeah, has that changed, by the way? Has that changed dramatically? Because the pitching always kind of happened, from a distance, and most of the time, right?
Yeah.
Has that changed how you do that?
Yeah, I think, we even need to be, even as PR practitioners, even more attuned to what the trends are and what the conversations are, and position our for us, as we are an agency, and so we have, our clients, we're positioning our clients either alongside or within those trends or bucking those trends. So riding those seams in between is where the journalist, the freelancer, the editor is looking to pitch their editors on getting getting those stories written. So I think what we're seeing less of is, hey, we have a new release. This is
I was going to
from
ask
our
you
side
that,
of things.
like a new wine release, tasting room kind of redo, all that stuff. I mean, or a new hospitality experience. Are you finding that that pretty much is a little superfluous, maybe almost at this point?
Yeah, not quite as black and white as that. I think, writers are still needed, and Mike can jump in here too from his experience, but, they still need to write about wines. They're still looking for rosés. They're still looking for summer things.
Yeah, not everything.
Still looking for the holidays.
All the time. It has to still be what we all love. And
right, but I think even more so, they're looking for the topics that are really hot right now: diversity, sustainability. What is the industry doing to increase the quality and the health of the industry in general. So I think that they're just, those trends are louder and stronger and clearer than they maybe were a year ago.
Thank you, Sarah. And so, Mike, are you seeing the same thing? That are you guys? What if? And also, not only are you seeing the same things, but what has your company, who's been around for quite some time and has just done a tremendous amount of projects in the wine business, you guys are obviously well known. What has changed dramatically for your company and you? Because I know you've been there for quite some time as well.
It's funny because I've been doing this for so long that I've seen trends come and go, right? And the sign of a good publicist is somebody who can adapt, right? They can adapt quickly to whatever the current conditions are, because they're inevitably going to change again. So while, right now we're dealing with a few of these issues, the issues 5 years ago were different. The issues 5 years before that were different.
Right.
So, things evolve. And on the PR side, right now, what I'm saying is that media are basically kind of looking for two things. Two things are kind of resonating right now with the media, and that is leadership and innovation, right? Okay. So if you are doing something to demonstrate leadership in the business, that's something that a media person is going to be interested in. And
what do you mean by leadership? Something that's just doing something innovative and different.
Taking a position, like especially, when it comes to, for instance, Black Lives Matter,
right?
And more than lip service, are you actually showing leadership, in addressing diversity, equity, and inclusivity, right, in the business? So that's definitely something that's resonating right now. And then innovation, because of COVID, what are wineries doing right now to provide an experience for their customers that's maybe different than what other people are doing? So the basics remain the same, right? The media is always going to be looking for ideas that are different, right? So if you're going as a winery owner or as a public relations agency or whatever, if you're going to a media contact and telling them the same freaking story that 20 other wineries told them yesterday, they're not going to pay attention to you, right? So having something unique about yourself, you got to find out what that is.
That winery, that brand, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about that quite a bit in my career. I was in marketing at Kendall Jackson, and one of the things that some of my mentors said to me, can you say that? Whatever statement I said, hey, what about this? Shiny new, blah, blah, blah. And they said, can any other wine brand say that? And I say, yeah, probably about 400 of them.
Yeah.
Well, then it's not a great statement then, because if everybody down the street could say the same thing, then it is not unique to us.
The other thing that I've seen on the media side is that there is this the one benefit of COVID is that it has really kind of pushed more winery owners and leaders in the direction of adopting new technologies and having to innovate. They have no choice now.
Yeah.
It's something that, some of us have been banging our head against the wall for quite some time to try and get the wine business to catch up with a lot of other industries when it comes to just basic marketing technologies that you can use that can make you much more efficient and frankly sell more your wine. I'm starting to see that a lot of wineries and winery owners are becoming more open to that, right? And they're starting to embrace this a lot more than they were before.
And let me ask you a question about that, though. Do you mean in how they, like this, what we're doing here, Zoom calls and that kind of thing, or how they approach trade? Or are you talking about more of the Facebook to Instagram, that kind of stuff where it's more customer focused?
All of it.
Both.
All of it.
Yeah, I'm seeing this being used a lot more because of business and things having to be done with sales teams and production teams. It's still on the social media side. I still think we're trailing a little bit. You see the music industry now just exploding online because they have to perform for someone, and so Dave Matthews is going to just keep doing once a week. And now every week I watch him, he gets better and better at the production, even though he's just outstanding whatever he does anyway. I see that wineries are definitely doing that in different ways. I noticed that John Charles Boisé is doing it online and starting to get a following. But he's a party in a box, and it's fun to watch him. Not all of us have that personality. So do you feel like
Sarah and I have both with John Charles? So
yeah, no, I know it's just awesome whatever he does. But do you find that it's balanced? Do you find that the trade and media side is as balanced in this new way of working as this consumer side?
It really depends on the winery and the client.
So certain ones are, and certain ones.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And it depends on whether they have the expertise in house or whether they're willing to go outside to find that.
Yeah, that's actually an excellent point, Kim, that I was going to ask you about, because some wineries that I've worked for have had hundreds of employees and a huge PR department and a design department. Then I've had other wineries that I've managed where it was all with one person. And to ask them to take on one or more thing, I think I was going to get pushed into one of the fermenting vats. So have you found that, what Mike was mentioning and Sarah was mentioning and how you approach the media and trade, is it stretching the team, I guess is what I'm asking, is that real, it's always fun to talk about all these things that we could do, but you only have so many people that sit around you in your winery that actually can do it. Do you find that that's a big challenge right now in implementing some of these?
In the very beginning, it was a little bit of a stretch because we do have a very small team, and it was basically 2 people. All right. It was my director of marketing and communications, Sarah, and me. And I have to say, one of the things that has helped me tremendously is having somebody like Sarah. And I think all wineries probably should have just somebody who understands a little bit more about technology than I did 6 months ago.
Right.
But, it's really easy to learn this. If you practice, you can get pretty good at it. And the reality is, I think this whole new the move towards virtual is one of the great equalizers of wineries. I mean, when back in the old days, right, I would if I did a trade lunch or a trade dinner or whatever, some event, there's really a limit to what we can do as a small, mid-sized family-owned winery. I don't have, Jose Cuervo sending me a check every month. But you know what? You can do some really innovative, fun things through virtual. We do them, and now we've gotten pretty good at it. We're doing them all the time, whether it's for distributors, whether we're doing a distributor sales meeting that's with bingo. We did a bingo game with our, distributor sales team because they wanted to do something fun and different. And we tied it into the history of our winery because that's one of the things that's very unique about us.
So I have to ask about that. How the hell did you guys do bingo over? Did you set it up in the room or did you have it virtual?
We did a virtual experience like
Everybody
this.
had bingo boards on their side. That is awesome.
And we're doing, partnerships with the local cheese purveyor, or, maybe a winery's located near a small, I don't know, it could be a salumi producer, but you can set up those partnerships and you can do a virtual tasting, whether it's with your distributor, with an account, whether it's a wine club, members, and be just as effective as the big boys. And that's what I like about it, because
and even sometimes even more unique.
Even more so. I think the biggest challenge was just initially learning the technology. You know, we made a very minimal investment. We bought what's called a Diva Light, you know, for like $100.
The donut.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Yeah, one right there.
The only reason I don't have mine up is because you can see it reflected.
Right.
In the glasses.
We actually set up a space in this. Right now I'm in my office, but normally when we're doing a tasting or an event or a virtual experience, if it has to do with wine tasting, we're doing it in the cellar. We set up a pretty kind of little area with a backdrop. And, you know, it just takes creativity and a little bit of, you know, a little bit of effort, but it's not, it doesn't take a lot of money. It just takes ingenuity, and I've learned the hard way. And I think that though it's like the great equalizer, and I think that's what's so exciting about it. Yeah. You know, we've been doing, like, we did some virtual blitzes in a market, right? Where, like you said, Jason, make up some little mini bottles, get account appointments, and instead of flying the sales team in to do a in-person market visit or blitz, which costs quite a lot of money for a small winery, we did it all virtually. And you know what? We sold more wine this year in those 3 days than the prior year.
Oh, did you?
Isn't that incredible?
Wow, so, congratulations.
I think frankly, I think one of the most, probably one of the things that holds wineries back is fear. You know, fear of failure, fear of looking dumb. And we all had
fear of
that.
Trying something new.
Yeah, but you know, you practice a couple of times, and it's not hard. I mean, you got to make sure you have appropriate Wi-Fi and you know, some basic stuff. But
well, I mean, and think back to the first few. You know, that you're excited that the audio works great and the video's coming clear.
Exactly.
But remember when you first started, it was, you know, janky. It was like looking at your grandmother on the screen. And
I remember the first, I did actually a winemaker dinner with an account. It's been a couple months now, but they hosted the Zoom call. Well, the owner of the restaurant, bless her heart, didn't know that, you know, it cuts off after 45 minutes if you haven't paid for Zoom. So here I'm in the middle of, you know, talking about our Zinfandel.
Yeah, you're waxing poetic. You're on a roll.
And there's 50 people, you know, and all of a sudden, black screen. So we now know we host them all, you know, we do the hosting, and just little things you learn like that.
All right, so I actually walked out in front of a camera just recently, and I was real cool. I was going to saber a bottle, right? Working at Mom all these years, I finally learned how to do that. And I was acting all like suave and everything, and I kicked the mic over, no audio, went flying across the room. Couldn't savor the bottle. Nobody could hear us. We had to go set it all back up again. You know, it's just.
But I think that's what's.
They love that moment more than anything else. Sorry, Sarah. Go ahead.
No, I apologize for interrupting, but I think that's part of the charm and part of the opportunity with this. You know, this format. You know, something's going to go wrong. Yeah. It always will. You plan as best you can, and then if something does go wrong, we hosted a tasting. And I actually got kicked off as the host. My colleagues kept running with it as if nothing had happened, and no one was the wiser. In fact, nobody was the wiser. So, move forward. If we're looking for advice for wineries, move forward, tell your stories. The word wine tasting is a bit of a misnomer. I think, Kim, you'll probably echo this. You have hosted several of these. It's not about the wines themselves. It's about the access to the winery.
It's storytelling. I mean, it's letting people have a little, a little vision into what your life is like. For example, last Wednesday, believe it or not, my winemaker and I were doing a virtual tasting. It was actually it was supposed to be in person. It was a fundraiser, and it was a dinner that had been auctioned off for a lung cancer foundation. And it was a local chef and our wines. Well, of course, we couldn't do it in person, so the organizer asked us to do it virtually. So Wednesday at 4 o'clock, and I had texted the organizer and I said, I just want to give you a heads up that there's a fire here, and it looks like it's getting worse, and if we may have to leave. So 30 minutes into it, we had to evacuate, but we were able to tell the story, and these people were able to kind of live our life for just a little.
So they did see that moment, Kim?
They really did. And I think just people can we can, you can relate to people, I think, this way that that I don't think any of us recognized that before. I know 6 months ago, I would have, I would have poo-pooed this kind of concept. And now, you know, I think it's going to change the way we do business going forward. I know it's going to make the ROI on travel. We're going to be analyzing that much more closely. You know, it's not going to be like, oh, I'll jump on a plane, I'll fly to Boston for something. I mean, it really is going to have to be worth the money.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like it's the big equalizer. I think especially for small wineries, this can be a very effective tool. And it's not just limited to the trade. It's like we say, the media, the trade, your wine club members, you know, fundraisers, distributor salespeople, you know, your local Rotary, you know, whatever.
And you know, Jason, Mike was mentioning this before about the unique aspect that you can offer, and Kim's mentioning it now. What's unique to Dry Creek comes through on the camera, where before, you know, at a POS in the store or just going to the website, which are beautiful, but still, you know, you can only get so much. Have you guys been using the social media? I mean, we were talking before about the back of the house stuff, the email campaigns, which, by the way, I feel your pain, brother. I could not tell you a time we've sent out an email to 50,000 people or 500, and I've always feel like I'm doing something they don't want, and then the response is always, you know, humbling. But
listen, they wouldn't be on your list if they didn't want to hear from you.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Now they could just hit unsubscribe. So, are you guys finding the same challenges, Jason, or what are you guys doing for social media wise that you were not doing before? Are you doing anything, or is it really just the email you're finding is
No. We're doing a lot more.
Okay.
One of the things, because we've always felt like a lot of the promise of social media is that it gets people behind the curtain. Like it gets them into your world in a way that they connect with the people and the struggles that you have and the discoveries that you make. And we felt like that was one of the first things that we identified when we realized we had to close our tasting room. We weren't going out and doing events.
Right.
Is how do we let people know that we're still here? We're still working on stuff, that the growing season is progressing, that the winery is still in good shape, that our people are still in good shape. So what we decided to do is to do a couple of weekly live broadcasts. I started doing one on Instagram, and Neil Collins, who's been our winemaker forever, started doing one on Facebook, each with a slightly different theme. Mine was more of a invite a guest on. At the beginning, it was people on our team, but we branched out pretty quickly and started inviting on writers and somms and other people in the wine world that we thought that our people would enjoy getting to know. And Neil's was other winemakers and tasting wines together. So he would invite a winemaker from another winery, and each with some connection to what we were doing, each would taste some of our wines and their wines and take questions and comments. And I think we found it so valuable that we continue to do it even after our tasting room was able to reopen. We cut its frequency down, so now we alternate weeks instead of both of us doing it every week.
Right.
I do one week and then he'll do it the next week. But it's again, it is totally an equalizer, like Kim said, because these tools are free or very cheap, and it's really just a question of your ingenuity and figuring out how to use them in a way that is true to who you are and what your brand is and what your people are comfortable with.
So you're branching beyond just the tasting and just the normal winery stuff, and you're branching out to more content that's relevant to what you guys do, obviously. Do you find, and Kim, this question is also for you, do you find though that sales, do you find that they get impacted right at that moment? Do people go online and buy? Do you find club signups go up? Or do you feel like this is still just keeping your name out there for people who can't visit, and it's just still building that awareness and brand awareness and brand equity?
At least for us, I'd say it's the latter. I've never thought that social media is very good at getting people to buy stuff, but mind share is so important. Getting people to keep you top of mind. I'm sure it increases their consumption of bottles that are already in their cellar, and it starts conversations, and it shows up later in sales, but it's indirect rather than direct.
Okay. What about you, Kim?
Well, with respect to social media, we're not seeing a lot of direct sales from that, but the difference that we've taken with social media is that I'm much more actively involved in it again. So, I'm doing my own stories. I mean, and that's, they want to hear from the people. And so we've extended, we have, our tasting manager does a story, the winemaker does a story. So we're much more active, and that's been good. But I would say that depending on the virtual experience, the virtual tasting or the virtual whatever we're doing, we've definitely seen direct sales. I mean, I mentioned the lung cancer charity dinner last week that we had to cut short because we were evacuated.
Yeah.
Well, great news is that, these people, they bought a bunch of wine. I did a tasting with a big retailer in Indiana, a while ago, and of course they were selling our wines they had like a special, and their customers came and got the wines, but the follow-up sales for that, were not direct from the winery, but from that store. So it's helping sell our wines through the trade, were amazing. Same thing happened with a country club in Wisconsin, and I think they ended up selling an additional 39 cases, which is a lot of wine. I mean, that's a lot.
Wow.
And so I think they can be very, productive from a sales standpoint. It sort of depends on the nuance of the experience.
Right.
If it's an educationally focused experience, it just depends.
Yeah.
But I'm a believer, and I was not a believer. Listen, I was such a dinosaur about this, and if you can teach this old dog a new trick, you can teach anybody a new trick.
And I totally agree that those sorts of virtual tastings, particularly the ones that are paired up with a restaurant or a retailer in market, those are great sales opportunities. But that's different than social media.
Correct.
The social media things, I think, are that's more marketing, whereas the live virtual events that people will have to buy the wines ahead of time and register for a Zoom call on, that's a sales opportunity.
That's a little bit of both, isn't it?
And I think you can do all of them. You dabble, and I think probably each winery sort of finds their forte. Like even in terms of platforms, like for me, I've done IG Live a couple of times, or Facebook Live. And you know what? I don't like it. I haven't really. This is just a sort of a reality thing.
Very good on camera, clearly here.
It's really hard for me. It's really hard for me to see with those platforms, because all that stuff is scrolling up the side.
Because of the
And I kind of realized, that's not my deal. And so I think just people find their own niche, and it's fun. It's actually really fun to learn new skills.
And it depends where your brand resonates too. A lot of brands resonate on Facebook because that's kind of our demographics. If you look at some of the other wine-type wineries, like in Healdsburg, one just opened up, and they do a lot on Instagram because their audience is just a little bit more, it's a little
younger.
Yeah.
I think you have to do it all, because of course all of us are trying to attract new customers, and
right.
I mean, that's really important. You need to be engaged in all platforms, but I guess the other thing, I said it a minute ago, I think it sounds like a weird thing to say, but it's kind of fun. I mean, this is all put like there's a new element to wine marketing and telling our story, and using technology to tell our story. And we show pictures, we show videos, and it's made it kind of fun, I think, in an odd way, even though it's been a time of, crisis and difficulty and all that.
Well, but we need to find those things of hope, and that the world is going to be better when we get back to whatever it is, and we hang on to those things as it's cathartic, right, for us. It's therapy. We all do this because we love wine, and we all know the wine business is absolutely miserable business to be in. But would we all be doing anything different? No.
I had a question for the group, and I'm I know that we've talked about the wineries and accelerating their marketing 5 years as a result of the shutdowns, but have our audiences also accelerated their acceptance of the technology? Yeah. So, for example, Mike, we've done tried to do virtual tastings with clients probably
years
6-7 years ago, and in fits and starts. And the same thing. I guess the question for Kim and Jason would be, has it also accelerated the acceptance in the trade for doing this as well?
Oh, definitely. And I think so, no question about it. And for even for wine club members, I mean, we have, you know, lots of wine club members that I probably wouldn't have thought would embrace this technology. And every time we do a new release tasting or whatever it is we're doing, they are on. You know, we had 130 people on a tasting with our winemaker 2 weeks ago. That was part of it. Yeah, I mean, it's wonderful.
It's only somebody's first time once. I mean, once somebody has made that decision to log on to a Facebook Live tasting or to do a book a private virtual Zoom event, then they've made that critical step. And I think it's worth noting that in a lot of ways, these sorts of experiences are more intimate than the traditional, like, go to a tasting room where you talk to a junior tasting room person and get the spiel that they get. And now instead you're in the living room with the winemaker, with the owner. You have access and a direct contact in a way that you really didn't get very often before.
To me, the owners, the families, and the winemakers are the rock stars. You know, that's it. At the end of the day, from the consumer standpoint, they want to hear from you guys. They want to hear the stories. And then now with what's going on, you can get to those other layers of people that work in the organization and the vineyard and in the marketing department. But I truly believe that you guys are the rock stars. People want to hear from you, and this is giving you a platform to do it, because you can't just do it when you have a tasting room that's got 100 and some odd thousand people coming through it. So, Mike, I have a very specific question for you. I'm listening to all these incredible stories, successes, Jason's kind of online show, right? Not kind of, but definitely online show, right? Like a late night guy. Tim's bingo and all this incredible other things that people are doing. Is any of this pitchable to the media? Can any of this be a story, or does that also have to be like where we're, lighting, we're doing something crazy like fireworks to put it in media? I mean, does the media latch on to any of this, or is this just really more consumer facing stuff?
Yeah, I think that's kind of, it's all flash and no thunder. So the media hasn't really changed what they need or want. And throughout this process, how we communicate with them may be different. How we make contact with them may be different, but they still want authenticity. They still want that peek behind the curtain. Okay. They still want to have to know what the soul of the brand and the people behind that brand is, right?
But still the traditional stories of Jason's winemaker and how he's been doing it for these many years. It's in the Estates, and it's still those stories. It's not, there's this.
It really depends. It depends on what your brand is and how it's positioned, because there's each brand's going to have a different audience. So, but for Kim and Jason's brands, it really is about the people. That's what's going to be really interesting to our media contacts, is they want to talk to Kim and Jason about, like, okay, what's the story behind your winery? But also it's like, okay, so what's the future? Yeah. There are certain things that always resonate with wineries. It's trends, it's innovation, it's future development. All those sorts of things are things that the media is always looking for.
So the message really is, even though a lot of these things are new, changed, we can't lose sight that the media does have an appetite for a certain bite at the apple that we need to continue to feed, right? That even though we have this cool widget, it might not be as cool to the media, even though we get a couple thousand people a week looking at it on Facebook, right? So
the other thing I think it's important to remember, I had one of the guys who I invited onto the conversation a couple of weeks ago was Paul Mabray, who, he's been basically saying the wine industry is 10 years behind on technology, which I think he's basically right.
Yeah,
and
I'd argue that. Yeah.
I asked him if he thought that this had pushed the wine community 5 years ahead, like we've heard about it happening with so many industries. And his comment was, no, it's 15 years. It's basically forced everybody to catch up the 10-year debt that they weren't paying before, and also move forward into the present age. But it's not like winery embrace of technology is all of a sudden ahead of what other industries are in. I'm not sure that that's a story in and of itself. It's more like, oh, you got out of the remedial class.
No, I mean, you have to consider the wine business is fairly unique amongst many businesses. The fact is that, you know, we literally have tens of thousands of wineries around the world who are basically making the same product, and they're competing for the same shelf space, right? So finding the expertise to help push the technology or the acumen when it comes to marketing sophistication, that's going to take time because the expertise just isn't there at most of these wineries right now.
Right. You know, but
sorry, Michael, are you talking about the technological expertise?
Technological and marketing.
Yeah.
Right?
I would say, you know, just from my own experience on the technology side,
yeah.
You know, we don't have a full-time IT director. We happen to have somebody who had a natural, you know, instinct for this, but, you know, it doesn't have to necessarily be the marketing person. It could be, you know, it could be your assistant. It could be the assistant winemaker. It could be the accounts payable person. If they're just comfortable with the basics of teaching you how to do a Zoom call, how to set up a chat, and you can learn from them.
Absolutely,
So
you can definitely get a good start.
If you have a tiny operation and you've got, you know, 3 people in your employ, especially if one of them is younger than a certain age, chances are they know how to do this. And they can teach you and they can help you and they can
maybe. I think Sarah would also agree that, with caveat, that would be a maybe.
I don't think,
again, that's not the story. The story is not like winery owner learns how to use.
No. But I just,
it is pretty exciting when us as winery managers, the owner learns that stuff. I gotta be honest.
But
Right,
just in terms of encouraging wineries to not be afraid, I think that's kind of what my message is be experimental. Find somebody. Maybe it's just your neighbor, for goodness sakes. If you're a one-man show, you know, someone on your block is going to be able to show you. Even my 80-year-old father we do Zoom meetings all the time with him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Don't be afraid to take risks. I mean, that would be my advice to most people who are watching this is don't be afraid to take risks. You know, take a couple $1,000s, throw it at a marketing program, see if it works. You know, maybe it works partially, you know, you make adjustments and you can go on from that. But, you know, just from your examples, Kim, you can show that, you know, you're able to actually recoup ROI on a lot of these activities.
Yeah.
So why not try them?
I'd like to wrap up this panel discussion, and I'm going to give you an opportunity, each one of you an opportunity to send a message to the rest of the industry. For all of those that lasted this whole 45 minutes with us, which I hope they did because I learned some new things. I thought this was truly not just an excellent conversation, but to me it was hopeful. It was positive. It wasn't how things are challenged, but how we're thriving and improving what we do. This has got to be one of the most interesting topics that I've been part of for that reason, because as we've talked, there's 18,000 bottles on a Whole Foods shelf, and how do you set yourself apart? But we're talking about things that Mike brought up in the beginning, and Sarah was discussing about how do you make yourself unique? How do you make your voice heard amongst all the other soloists in the world? So Sarah, I'm gonna start with you here, and I'm gonna give each one of you an opportunity just to kind of say something about the topic, or maybe just a message to the industry as we head out the door here.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would start at the beginning, which was, you know, stop thinking about these as tastings, because they're not. They're storytelling opportunities. Let the audience taste the wines on their own. They can make their judgments whether they're a consumer or a press person or a trade. But they want to hear from you. They want to hear your stories. So let's get better at telling our stories.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. And I think Kim and Jason have both absolutely showed us today that the story behind the story is what keeps people coming back, and all the interesting things that go on. So thank you, Sarah. That's actually very, very good. Mike, what about you?
Well, I would say that people need to start thinking of marketing and sales, for that matter, as a mission critical piece of their business. a lot of times these functions are a bit of an afterthought. Like a lot of thought goes into production, like how many barrels do we need? How much tank space do we have? All the things that go into making the wine. But then when it comes to marketing and selling the wine, a lot of the wineries are falling short. And so my advice is actually, have a marketing plan, have a strategy in place or multiple strategies in place, regardless of what technology you're using. Figure out what it is that you want to accomplish and then figure out how to get there. And that's the advice that I can give you. If you don't have strategic thinking within your organization, go find it.
I think that's an excellent point, because I used to call that the true North Star in our mission plans. Like when people would come to me with questions or anything, I said, well, does that fit or where we're going? Is that the North Star?
Does this meet our goals that we set out?
And by the way, I've managed brands that are 1 million cases, and it was on 2 pages sometimes. This doesn't have to be the, hey, Eric, it's not 80 pages of PowerPoint. They could be just 1 pager on where you're going. It doesn't have to be an MBA type document.
Right. And it's easy. It's easy to start. Start with mission, vision, and values. That's it. Figure out what your mission, vision, values are. If you haven't already done that, that'll get you started.
And then everything we've been talking about today, does it fit in those 3 categories for you? If it does, great. If it doesn't, then you need to move on. Thanks, Mike. Kim, what about you?
So you're going to have to repeat the question.
A tremendous amount, by the way, over the last.
You're going to have to ask the question again, because I was just listening so intently on Michael and Sarah. And
you've been through quite a bit today. I mean, and this week, and we feel for you more than anything else. We weren't even sure if we're going to do the call. I'll share that with everybody because we weren't sure where you were going to be. And so, just your parting call to this discussion. What message do you have for all the wineries out there, the executives, the people that are working behind the scenes? What message do you have for them through all of this? Because you've been doing this for quite some time, and you guys are absolutely thriving right now. So what would you like to leave to the panel with?
Oh boy. Well, I've sort of said it before. Jump in. Just jump in the deep end of the pool, and you'll figure out how to swim. And that's sometimes how we have to go about life in general, right? Like we've been through so many crises, and we're bouncing out the other side, and we're going to be just fine. And I think with respect to the, learning this virtual technology, find someone on your team that can assist you, that can help host the calls, that can help show the slides or whatever you're going to show to help tell your story, and do it. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, obviously, but I think embracing it instead of avoiding it is really important, because I do believe this is here to stay. And because it's so inexpensive, there's really no barrier to entry. And there's very few things in our industry where that's the case, right? There's always somebody that's got a fancier this and that, or whatever. They've got a private chef, or they've got, an unlimited amount of money from whatever, the oil.
Wait a minute, an optical sorter that you can get on your iPhone? Are we kidding me?
Right. So, but what I love about this is that wineries, family-owned, authentic wineries like mine, like Jason's, and many, many, many others can tell their story, can be engaging, can get creative, whether they're doing bingo or they're doing whatever. I mean, it's like really your only limitation is how creative you can be, because it's not expensive. It takes a little time, it takes a little practice, and that's about it.
Well, we're very happy that you're here, Kim, and that you made this call. So thank you.
Thank you.
Jason, you have the last say here before we come out.
Well, just building a little bit on what Kim said, I think it's a mistake to think of this as something that you need to do for a few months to tide you over until things get back to normal.
Yeah.
I think that there are a lot of things that are maybe not going to get back to normal ever or for a long time. And I think we're going to be in this situation where people are going to be reluctant to travel. A lot of the sorts of events where you would normally see large groups of people and do your face-to-face marketing are probably not going to happen for a while. Mm-hmm. So I think if people are saying, oh, whatever, I can get through another couple of months the way that I'm doing it, that's the wrong way to go about it. I think that developing the tools and the skills and the techniques and the new sorts of events where you're meeting your customers, whether these are direct customers or whether these are wholesale customers, meeting them where they are instead of asking them to come to you where you are is going to be the key to being successful over the next year, year and a half, 2 years.
Excellent. Couldn't agree with that more. And I think, also our CFOs will agree with that.
Yeah.
Right? We all know, right? That's the biggest part about closing a deal is or introducing something new is the cost associated with it. And it's already expensive to make wine. So I can't thank you guys enough. This was an outstanding discussion. I want to thank Jason Haas. I want to thank Sarah Jones, Kim Stair-Wallace, and Mike Wangbickler from Balzac Communications. All of you have been in the industry for a great amount of time. You've seen it from all different places. I mean, you guys are outstanding and refreshing in the way you think about the business. You could be pretty beaten up by now, and we're not. And it warms my heart to see that everybody's not only doing great things and making awesome wine, by the way. As I said to everybody on the call here, maybe next time each one of us needs to get a case of, Dry Creek and Tablas Creek, but that'll be for another discussion. We'll talk. So thank you so much for being here with us. I do want to mention to our audience that we can't cover every question that you send in, but we will be sending a link to watch the replay for all the videos. And in that email, we will answer many of the questions that we couldn't cover today. I want to remind the audience also that the final session is coming up next. Through Distributors' Eyes, Advice from the Field will begin at 11 o'clock. So Kim, Jason, Mike, Sarah, it's been my absolute pleasure and my honor to host this panel discussion, and I hope you guys have an outstanding harvest.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks,
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
A lot of fun.